Hello, my faithful followers and friends. I'm here today with Tony Farinella, another former student from many, many moons ago. I started at Oak Lawn Community High School in 2002, and I had Tony in 2003. And he's now the age of most of my friends. So it's really great, Tony, to have you because I know you were always in a unique, creative mind. You currently are working in a field where you write movie reviews and you're an interviewer yourself. So I'm a bit intimidated because I know you interview other people. But yeah, it's been great. Tony reached out to me on social media, and if I could read this first, and then anything you have to say. I've decided to reemerge from hiding. I had a ton of doubts, insecurities, and I did a lot of second guessing. Would people remember me? Would they care? Did I burn too many bridges? Should I even bother? Over the past 24 hours, I realized I must have done something right in life, despite that many F ups and mistakes I made, to receive such a warm welcome from people I've met, cared about, and made many memories with over the past 36 years of my life. Thank you for remembering me, caring, and welcoming back. It means more words to express. I feel like I've lived 4 or 5 different lives with all the people I've encountered from all walks of life. And isn't that the truth? I love the variety of life that I've encountered as well. It's so good to get out of your bubble and meet so many other people. It's so important to embrace everyone. So if you have anything more to say before we move into the program.
Yeah, well, it was hard because what I was doing for a long time was I was actually using my wife's social media, but I would sign my name if it was my post.
Oh,
So it was her social media, but I kept it to like a select few people I trusted. So I would
yes.
just be like, all right, I'm going to be underground, but if people want to talk to me, they can, contact me through my wife's page. But I felt I lost my sense of independence because you
Mm,
want to have like your own page and you want to make it your own. And I would like ask her, is it okay if I post this? And I tend to be a little bit more controversial and a little bit
yeah, yeah,
more outspoken. And she's kind of
sure.
more, she's more of an introvert.
Mm,
So she'd be like, I don't know if I want you posting that. And I'm like, so I felt like, well, I'll give it a chance. And I've been reading a lot about like, discomfort. And it's good to feel discomfort.
yay. I
And I was
love
like,
that.
thank you. And I'm just like, this might be awkward and not everyone's going to embrace me. Not everyone's going to like me, but that's okay because I feel like I've met people through my time, liking pro wrestling, through writing, high school, college, and I'm like, I'll just put myself out there. And then before I knew it, there was so many, people popping up. I'm like, I remember that person. I remember that person.
That's
I remember that
amazing.
person. And
But you're
and it's
right. The social media, I have a love-hate relationship with it as well because I am more of an introvert. I like to be alone, rejuvenate by myself. And yet I've been able to connect with some old friends recently that I would never have been able to without social media. So that's the beauty. And when you posted so many pictures from high school, I just was reminded of how much love you shared. You were that guy that was like almost like the mascot. Like you did not subscribe to just one group. You were just hugging on everybody. As I looked through those pictures, it triggered a lot of memories.
I
So,
I was never like I was never a jock. I was never part of any clique. I was
yep,
just everyone's. I liked everybody. I'm like,
yep,
if you are, I just like nice people. That's it.
yes.
It's like if you're nice and you're open to me, I'll be nice and open to you. I'm not gonna be like, oh, well, I'm too good for you.
That is a message we need to definitely get out there. Be yourself and love everyone. Simple.
And I felt like when I was in high school, it was a lot harder. Where now there's more acceptance. Where in the
Yeah,
early 2000s there was more of that, cliquish, mentality.
you're right. You are
because
right.
people because people either loved me or they hated me because they're like, oh,
Yeah.
he's so friendly, he's so outgoing, he's so peppy. What's up with that?
I know.
I'm
I
like,
know.
I don't care. I'm like, it's made me friends and it's
Ex-
made people like me. So
exactly.
I guess staying true to yourself is so important.
I love that because it's almost, you're just almost at talking about this, the innocent, stupid story I like to start with, which is like you're naive about stuff, or it can be anything that's just, I don't know, I call it my stupid, innocent story. What do you have for us for that?
Um, when I was younger, which kind of shows how I am now, I'm sure you can tell by how I talk. I would always be very disruptive in kindergarten. So they put me in what was known as the quiet chair. So when you were in this chair, you could not talk because even back then, I was talking to 5, 6 year olds as I was 5 and 6 years old myself, and the teacher would even talk to my parents and be like, Tony's got great energy, great enthusiasm, but we can't keep him focused. And I'm trying to teach a lesson, and here he is. He's talking to everybody. He's interrupting the class, and it's like I didn't know any better. I just I like at the time when you're young, it's like your brain's all over the place. It's like you can't focus. And I'm just like, I want to talk to people. And I want to be like, how was their weekend? And it's like, Tony, back to the quiet chair. I'm like, all right.
That breaks my heart because I always feel like that's a sign of genius when you are that way, and a school doesn't often honor that type of genius, because you had probably the social emotional intelligence that everyone's talking about, right? But back then nobody understood what emotional intelligence was, and here you have it naturally. And I just think that's sad, because I also got talks too much disturbs others comments on my report card, and then I kind of just shut down. I just said, forget it. No one listens to me. Forget it. So that's something that kind of killed my spirit through the years. Still does. But yeah.
Well, for me though, being in your classroom, to me, it's what made you such a unique teacher. Was I remember, even like when I told people I have, Miss Para, they were like, she lights incense in her classroom. She's a little bit different, and she looks like Tina Fey. That's what everyone said about you.
That is funny.
And I remember, walking in, and the classroom was had the incense lit, and it was kind of, dark and kind of relaxing. And you just had this very welcoming vibe. And I'm like, this is not like a normal teacher, but I mean that as
compliment.
Compliment. Yeah. Because everyone's like, all right, here's a textbook, turn to page 65. And you really allowed people to come out of their shell.
Well, that's so funny you say that, because I didn't realize I've been on this mantra for over 30 years as a teacher. But I said to my mom when I got out of college, I had an English degree. I was 2 months away from graduating with an English degree. I'm like, what am I going to do with this degree? She's, you should be a teacher. I'm like, ain't going to be no stupid teacher. And that's actually a book I'm writing, even though the Ain't Gonna Be No Stupid Woman came into play first. I am like, what? And I literally verbatim said that, because I thought what you just said, it's that textbook turning, sit up and shut up and that. I could not stand the thought of it. And here I am 30 years later. I guess I couldn't fight it. But thank you for that. Stupid situationship, which I could call my teaching career a stupid situationship. Love it. But again, it has its issues, right? So tell me, what do you got for that one?
I would definitely say my relationship with my in-laws, which is always a very difficult topic, I feel like, for a lot of people to talk about, and almost like it's taboo, because they're like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody, I want to keep the peace. And I had that mentality for a long time, but eventually you hold it in and you start to burst, because you feel like something's not right. And I'm going to be very transparent here. And I have talked to my wife. She's okay with me talking about it. I'm a smart enough man to know you got to run things by your wife first.
I know, right? Especially when you're talking about her parents.
I know, right? But I mean, she's heard me, say so many things for so long. And, I've talked to, to so many different therapists about it. And, one thing about me, which people, might judge or might think is peculiar, is because I have anxiety, I don't have a car and I don't drive, even though I'm 36.
Good for you. I just got a car. I had no car for 3 years. So when you live in the Chicago area, it's awesome. You don't need a car. It's an adventure every day. And I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I like to walk to places. I walk, a lot, and, it keeps me healthy, keeps my mind sharp. So that was one of the first things they didn't like about me, was because they think if you don't have a car, you're not masculine, because they're all about the cars.
Yes, we're gonna get into the toxic masculinity in a minute here. Yes.
Yeah, like her dad reads Motor Trend, and I'm like, I don't care if you're into cars, that's fine, but don't project that onto me. Everyone's different, and just they didn't like that I didn't have a car. And here's the thing, it never bothered my wife. Like, she would tell her mom, if it doesn't bother me, why does it bother you?
Thank
you.
And
her mom didn't have an answer, because she would say, her and I are going, or her and I are going to the same places. Why does it matter who's driving? I mean, I would pitch in for gas, of course, but if we're going to the same places, we're going on a date, or we're going to a movie, restaurant, why does it matter who's driving? Why is there this thought of the man has to drive and the woman has to be the passenger? So there was issues with that, and I spent so much time just trying to get them to like me, trying to get them to accept me, and sort of changing who I am, maybe being more outgoing, more sociable. And no matter what I did, it was just never good enough. It was just, I was never accepted. And because I work from home, they assume that means you're unemployed.
Wow.
Like, like they've even said to her, like, does Tony work? What does he do? And it's like, we're in the 21st century. Just because I don't have a uniform and I can
Right.
work in my pajamas, it doesn't
Right.
mean that I can't make money. There's just different. I mean, with the internet now, there's so many different
Yes.
ways to make money. It's just a
So
different world we're living in.
you worked from home before it was COVID cool to work from home.
I started working, Amanda and I have been together since 2010. And I worked at Blockbuster until they closed in 2012, February.
Oh.
So like after that, some anxiety developed, and I just didn't feel comfortable being around people a lot. So I started to develop some online, jobs and gigs like that, and they would just see me over like all the time. They're like, "Does he never work? Why is he?" I'd be like, "No, I work. I just can work when I want, and I
Tell
can,
me,
pick my own hours."
what movie was that just had the blockbuster from Oak Lawn in it?
There was a movie called The Last Blockbuster. Is that the one you're
That's
thinking
it.
of,
And
or?
the Oak Lawn blockbuster was in it. Are you?
Yeah, yeah. I think in like an advertisement, right? A commercial
Yeah,
they showed
it
for it.
was actually
Yeah.
within it. Yeah.
I
So
didn't
that,
work at that one though. I worked at the one
okay.
on 104th or 106th and Cicero. I worked at that one, which is now I
Okay.
think like an auto zone, I believe it is
Oh,
now.
wow. So RIP Blockbuster, right? So
And then I
wait,
worked at that store. I worked at the Hickory Hills one, the Payless Hills, Payless Heights, Hickory Hills. I
so
was
you were
transferred all
going up the
over.
ladder probably,
I
right?
was. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. A mover and a shaker. Did you then, what do you do now for a living?
Now I am what's known as a search engine um, optimizer. So I have to use like, keywords to get people's like, blogs or their, companies, more traction online.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the main source of income
Cool.
is that one. So say if I was writing about a dentist in Payless Park, I have to hit certain keywords like dentist Payless Park has to be in there like 25 times.
Oh, wow.
So say if someone's looking for a dentist, then it'll pop up. So clients will hire me, and I will have to write up different, documents about them to get them more
Oh,
traction. So it's not the
good.
most exciting, but for me, it makes me comfortable because
For
I'm
sure.
comfortable at home with our cat, and I get to
Yes.
relax. And
Your
I'm a
cat
night
name,
owl.
well, hey, I'm a
Yes,
night owl too, but not anymore. But your
yeah.
cat is named for those Packer fans out there. Sorry, Chicago. Lambeau is your cat's name. And you're a
Yep,
Packer
yep.
fan, which
Oh,
my family will
huge.
love, of course.
Fan, huge. I
That's
don't know if
great.
I could show them here, but I got two, Packer tattoos,
I love it. And a Packer, oh, a Bucks shirt on.
and
I
I got even my ring is green
That is
from when I was
hilarious.
married. Yeah.
Hilarious. I went to college in Green Bay, so of course I can't not love the Packers. All right, so we're gonna head into our main dish, which is our Ain't Gonna Be No Toxic Male. You
Mhm.
came up with a title, and I love it because I have encountered many toxic males throughout my lifetime, and I think you often attract toxic when you aren't, when you are nice. And I'll tell you right now, anybody listening, if you don't have any toxic people in your life, you probably are the toxic person. So
Yep.
keep that in mind. So let's go down the list if we can. Number one, acting like a bully to maintain a constant competitive advantage. Have you encountered anyone like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I would say in high school, one of the main things was, people will find anything about you that maybe you're insecure about or that you're not comfortable about, and they will pick on that.
I know.
And I had really bad skin, like, I still get, pimples even in my 30s. I'm like, I didn't sign up for pimples in my 30s. They're supposed to be gone now. But like I still but like from the acne, and I used to have, still pops up occasionally, a stuttering problem.
Mm,
So a lot of times I would deal with a lot of, the bullying, and just, because I didn't conform to what people think a guy should be,
yep.
which is like, I wasn't talking about girls in a sexual manner. I'd
Yep.
say I have a crush on this girl. And if I was talking to her, some of the guys would be like, "Oh, have you done anything with her yet?" And I'm like,
Mm,
"I'm just talking to her. I'm just
mm.
talking. I have a crush on her. That's not what I'm thinking. I want to have a relationship, with
That's
this girl.
beautiful. Yes.
I'm not thinking about sex." But so it's like they automatically went into sex, and that was kind of their, main thing. And I never gave in though. Like they would put some of the pressure on me, but I would just never give into it. I always
Good
felt
for
like
you.
I have to stay true. And it was hard though, because, you feel that pressure and you want to fit in, but
Hmm.
at the same time, I never liked fitting in.
Yeah,
I kind of like being the outcast and the one who was different and,
right.
didn't subscribe to their beliefs and kind of marched to the beat of my own drummer.
I
And
think that's brilliant because I feel the same. And I think it's important to sometimes if I'm in a crowd and not feeling like I fit in, I say to myself, but do I want to fit into this crowd or the way they think? And I say to myself, no. So there's no reason to be sad about that, right? But that's number 6 on the list, what you brought up. So we'll get to that if you, I mean, you don't have to elaborate, but number 6 is treating women as sex objects or that locker room talk.
oh, I want to add, one more point too. I would get, invited a lot to, parties, and they would put the peer pressure on me to, come to parties. And I don't drink and I don't smoke. I never have in my entire life.
Good for you.
I've never had a sip of alcohol. I've never smoked. I've never done any drugs.
Good,
But
good. Wow.
I don't judge those who do drink or smoke,
Right,
as long as it's not around me. I just don't want
right.
to be around it, because my mother was an alcoholic. I've seen the effects it can have on people. So I never wanted to be around it. And if I didn't want to come to parties, they'd be like, "Oh, come on, you're being a baby. Just have one beer, do this." And I'm like, I would just smell it, and I'd be like, "This smells terrible. I don't want
Yeah.
to drink this." And
Yep.
then with all the side effects of, smoking, I'm like, I don't, it's not for me. And they'd be like, "Oh, come on." And this sort of that, bullying mentality of, be one
Yeah.
of us, be the herd. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I want to stay home and watch a Cary Grant movie.
Good for you. I
I want to
love
stay
that.
home. And they just always like, I've always been called an old man. Like even when I was
Yeah.
like young,
Old
they're like, "You're,"
soul. Sure.
yeah. And I took it as a compliment. I'm like, I've been through a lot, so without sounding pretentious, I always felt, wise beyond my years.
Wow. You definitely are. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Um, it says here that number 2, avoiding losing at all costs is also like a masculine or that competitive nature. Is that something you felt like when you say you wrestled? How do you wrestle without a competitive edge? Or you still have a competitive edge?
Yeah, it's sort of a hard thing, because I feel like, well, I never actually wrestled myself. I was just around wrestlers. So I would like,
Oh,
I was more of like a, I would interview the wrestlers. I would, and write about the shows. So I never actually wrestled. I was a manager one time, and that was fun because I got to
oh,
be the bad guy. So I would like
yeah.
rile up the crowd, be like, "Hey, I hate South Bend, Indiana. All you hillbillies." Like you would just find like whatever town you were in, and just
Sure.
as a heel manager, as they call it, you just had to rile them up. So,
Hilarious.
so at the time it was fun. I would just, you would
So you
just,
kind of had to be
make.
a little bit of a bully there, didn't you?
I did, yeah. But I mean, I knew it was under the pretense of wrestling, though, which
Yeah,
is,
yeah. And that's part of the act. Yeah,
yeah, it's, I mean, you teach drama, correct?
yeah.
So it's no different than playing the bad guy.
Right.
So I knew it was just a role, so I was
And
able to
everyone has that person in them. It's not like nice people, good people who attract toxic people doesn't mean that we also don't have our flaws and our evil dark side, right? So as much
right.
as we try to fight it, yeah,
It can be fun to tap into under the right circumstances.
exactly.
So
Under
it's
the
like,
right circumstances, yes.
and because it was entertainment, everyone knew
Hmm.
it was entertainment. Everyone
Yeah,
knew I wasn't really calling them hillbillies, or I wasn't
right,
really being a jerk. It was just
right.
me playing a character, and I wanted them to hate me and hate the person I was managing to
Perfect.
attract heat. And so it's like I was able to separate that. And even actors, I'm sure you've heard that, they've even said it's much more fun to play the bad guy than it is to
Yes,
play the good guy.
yes, yes, yes. It is. It is because you can unleash it all, right?
Yeah.
All right, number 3, restraining one's emotions except for pride and anger, which is the only acceptable masculine emotions that are allowed in our society. Pride and anger. But real men have emotions, and it's attractive. And it's comforting to know that you also feel what I feel instead of always chasing to see if they like you or what do they think about me, right? It's like
Hmm.
that's toxic.
Well, it's so interesting because I think so much has changed, Miss Para, because when I was in high school, I thought just me being a nice guy would, allow me to have, a girlfriend. But, back then it was the opposite. I felt like, girls were more into the bad boys. So it kind of made me very frustrated because I'm like, I want to be a nice guy. And like, I knew that if I could play games, then the girls, like, if I wouldn't respond to them, they'd like me more. It's like, I don't want to do that.
I
Like, I
know.
want to, like, I, I've always joked, I was the president, CEO, and the chairman of the friend zone. I was always in the friend zone. Like, women never saw me as as the guy who would be the boyfriend material.
Oh,
I would hear all about their problems. I'd be the shoulder to cry on. I mean, you name it. And now I feel like it's kind of, we've seen a good change to
yes.
where, now it's a good thing to be a sensitive guy and to be in
Yes.
touch with your emotions.
I'm
But,
so glad
back
the tide,
then,
yeah, the tide is shifting. I really believe that if anyone's listening that's still in that belief that they can't show their emotions or be a real human being as a male, please know this is the time to like let it out because everyone's got their little jar of feelings like in here and then it's going to
mhm,
burst, right? You'll have nervous breakdown and mental health is such a buzzword, but it's such a need. It's such an epidemic that people don't understand, right?
it
But
is.
look
Yeah.
at you. I wanted to say, look at you now with your wife. You sound like you got a gem.
I do. I got so lucky. I got
I
so
love it.
lucky, and the story behind meeting her is kind of ironic, because at the time she had a boyfriend. So I was like, "Oh, she's off limits." But, because she had a boyfriend, it kind of allowed me to be myself around her. I didn't
Yes.
have to try so hard because I'm
Yes.
like, "Oh, she's already spoken for, so I can just be myself around her." And just to show you what a diehard, fan I am of the Packers, I'll never forget this. It was like November 2010, and she sent me a text message, and she said, "Get your cute butt online and talk to me." And I was like,
Wow.
what? I'm like, I like that she made the move because
Yes.
I was so used to always being the one who had to make the first move.
Yes.
And I said to her, I said, "I like you too. I'll text after the game's over."
Huh, that's good. That was good.
Because I had to watch the game.
Good for
I'm like, I
you.
like you. I'm like, I like you too, but the Packers. So she knew early on that she was dating a diehard Packer fan. She knew
I
right
love
away,
it.
like, because I'm like, I like you, but then it was a tricky situation to navigate because I didn't want to put any pressure on her to leave the relationship. It was one of those relationships which I'm sure you're familiar with, where you're dating somebody, but at the same time it's already over. Just no one's kind of written the paper.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's like you're in it, but it's basically dead. It's
Yes.
done. It's over with. But it's like nobody has the courage to just say, "Listen, let's just separate."
I seriously, no one wants to put I hate to see a dying animal die slowly. I want to put
Mhm.
the animal out of its misery. And yet the relationships, oh, the slow death is the worst.
Because I made sure, like, I would talk to her. I'd say, "Are you sure you want to leave him? I don't want, like, I don't want to be the cause of a broken relationship. Are
Yes.
you sure you're
Yes.
okay? Do you feel comfortable with this?" She's like, "Yes, I've been unhappy for a long time, and you listen to me, you talk to me,
Oh,
you want to spend time with me." And I'm like, finally, I'm like, all these things I did in high school that didn't work are working now in college.
this is great. Well,
I
did
just
you
had
hear
to
that?
wait.
Listen to me, talk to me. You actually want to hear about my day. Like, do you know how many people I've known that don't even want to hear about my day? It's just all about them, all about them,
It
all
is.
about them. And it's so this is key. I love that you just said that.
Yeah, and just, through that, she needed some time to kind of, break up with him and, kind of move on. And I said, "Whenever you're ready to date, I'm ready. Just,
So great.
I'm like, I'm gonna put the ball in your court. I'm like, it's up
Yeah.
to you. Whenever you're ready to date, I'm ready." And in some ways it was the best thing that could have happened because I feel like if she was single, maybe I would have been trying too hard, or I would have been
Yes.
trying too hard to be
Scared her.
funny. Where, yeah, exactly. Where instead I was just like, "Hey, I'm just this friendly, wacky, kooky guy," and that's what attracted her to me, was that there was no sense of me trying too hard,
I
and
love
she
that.
liked me exactly who as I am, and it was so assuring to know that I could be myself.
Yes.
And she appreciated just long nights on the phone, just talking or watching a movie together. And she really appreciated that someone, as you said, asked her about her day and listened and looked her in the eyes and paid attention to her, because I think a lot of guys, what happens is they're very good in the pursuit, but then
Yes.
once they get the girl, they're like, "Now I'm done."
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've learned to play hard to get later in life too, and it's much better. It's much more fun because they do stick around longer, but then at the same time, you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if I want you to stick around longer because then I now the power is in my court, and it's like, oh, I don't even think I want you here because the way you're treating me. Whereas if you give it up too soon, which I don't give it up anymore,
Mhm.
then that just weeds out half the guys. So that's also good. You
Yeah.
also, I wanted to ask you this.
Sure.
You took the plunge to get married after like 6 years together. What makes someone, because I know people don't believe in marriage anymore, it seems like, and I think it's sacred. So tell me more. What made you take the plunge?
Wow. So I felt like I wanted to get the therapy I needed. I wanted to get, my life in order. Plus, for the first 3 years we were together, I was living with my dad and my grandparents. She was living with her parents. So it's like, first we got an apartment. And I would advise this. I don't want to sound like I'm some, love guru here, but I, I would advise, most people. I said, even though you and I get along really well, I said, why don't we get an apartment first before we get a condo? Let's live together for 1 year and see how we get along. Because you never know who somebody is until you move in with them. So this way we have the 1 year lease. At the end of it, if we hate each other, if we can't stand each other, w- you know, you know, I can go my separate way and you can go your separate way, and no harm, no foul. And I feel like so many people jump in so quickly. And when we moved in, there really were no problems. It was just us living together. But you never know until you live with someone. And I think it's so important to get an apartment first before the condo and the house. Like,
Well,
get the apartment. Yeah,
I'm
I'm
a,
sorry. Go ahead.
I'm an advocate of marrying first because I heard statistics that say people who live together, if you do it, they 50% divorce when they live together
Mhm,
first. But again, you can find any stats. But I do know you can also gauge the energy just when they, like, say you take a weekend trip and you
mhm.
can just gauge if you can handle that person for 24 hours, right?
Yeah,
Or a
yeah.
couple days, and that energy
Mhm.
in the room, you can even tell when, like, I know I was dating someone, the energy in the apartment was just like, I couldn't breathe. Like that would have been a sign, but that was another one of those slow deaths, right? You don't break up right away,
Right.
but just the
Yeah.
energy of somebody, it's like, okay, can't really deal with this. But I hear you on that. So you waited and you lived together, and then you ultimately, what
And
made you get married?
and and then we were in a condo for 2 years, and we're still in the condo now. And finally, I just needed this. I wanted to get my mental health in order because I felt like I couldn't be the husband, you know, that she needed, until my mental health was better. And I wanted to save up enough money to get a good ring.
Yes,
So
nice.
so it's like you don't want to just get any,
Good for
cheap
you.
old ring. So I
Sure.
I I wanted to have some stability with work and have some stability with my mental health and then get married. So,
So how did you get stability with your mental health?
just by keeping up with it. I feel like a lot of people, they think they're under this impression that if you take a pill, everything's going to work. And my therapist, told me that it's more important the work you do outside of our sessions than it is
Mm,
in our sessions, because
that's
they can give
good.
you all the tools in the world. As the
Yep.
old expression goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
Yes.
So I had to find the right combination that works for me. And
Yeah.
once I found that, I'm like, all right, I feel like I'm in a stable enough place to be a husband, because and it also showed me how much she loved me, because she was there for me when I used to be 200 pounds, and now
I
I'm down.
remember now. Yeah.
Yeah, and now I'm down to 125. And
Wow.
so it's like I wanted to, be right physically, mentally, and I didn't want to be in a place where I wasn't right,
Good
because I
for
knew
you.
it just wouldn't work. So I'm like, I knew she was going to stick around. I didn't have any concerns because she's very loyal. And I just think having an honest and open dialogue where I told her, like, I want to get married to you. I love you, but I just got some things I need to work out,
Love
because if
that.
not, those things are going to come up later on if you don't work them out. I mean,
Yeah.
those demons, those
Yep.
problems,
Yep.
they are going to come back.
Yes.
So I had to work through all that, and it's still a work in progress. Even now,
Always.
I mean, people who say they're a finished product, I'm like, who do you think you are? I'm like, we're
No,
all a work in progress.
right.
You know, we're all figuring things out, and we're all learning about ourselves. And we just ended up getting married at a courthouse because we don't really have big family. It wasn't, they wanted to have some big, bash or whatever, and they were disappointed. And I heard the expression about in-laws that always made me laugh, which is they should keep their mouth shut and their wallets open.
Yeah, if they want to have a wedding, all right, bring it. You plan it, you pay for it, you do it. But that's a lot. That is a lot. And also that attention on you is very daunting, especially for
It,
introverts, right? It's just like too
right.
much spotlight.
And like for my wife, she's a super introvert, like super introvert. Like on her YouTube channel.
Amanda Crochets
Yeah.
is her YouTube channel, and she has a
Mhm.
ton of followers. You need to go there if
Yeah.
you want to learn to crochet.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the shout out. And she just shows her hands crocheting.
Right,
She's not even on camera, and she gets
right.
38,000 subscribers. So that's how shy she is. She's
It's
just an
amazing.
introvert. I'm an extrovert, but it's a good balance because
Perfect balance.
someone like me, I think I would exhaust myself if I dated someone like me,
Exactly. I'm always like, you ready to take me on? You sure you want to take me on? And you're like,
Yeah,
what do
yeah,
you mean? What do you
yeah.
mean? Okay, let's go to number 4. Showing strength and aggression in moments of conflict. That's a toxic masculine trait. This conflict, all this aggression. And that's to me a sign of insecurity because you're like, wait a minute, you haven't been taught to communicate with a gentle tone. And I think that's sort of a default for men. And I kind of empathize with the way they've been conditioned. So, can you speak to that?
Yes, yeah, yeah, for sure. And I've even been guilty of that, myself. I will say, like, I will admit that. A lot of times when I've had to, call, say, some like someone on customer service, I feel like those are some of the worst calls you have to make because you can never find the person you need to talk to. Like,
Right.
there's that one manager who could solve it in 2 minutes, but you got to go through the whole infrastructure of like, putting in your information, you get transferred, you're on hold. So already that kind of builds up the anger in me. So when I'm
Yes.
on the phone, I'm already like annoyed. I'm like,
Yes. Yes.
oh, and I start to raise my voice. I always feel bad about it, but just sometimes I find in my own self, and something I have to work on is just to know that they're doing their job to the best of their abilities, and it's not their fault.
Yes.
But sometimes I find when I have to deal, or even like out in public, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I don't really blame it, with the pandemic. I feel like it was even, it was even, back in the day, is that people just don't care about their jobs anymore. People are on their cell phones. People aren't, very attentive. And I can be very sarcastic. I will admit that. And if someone's kind of unpleasant with me, I'll say to them, "Are you always this friendly?"
You do
So
not.
I did. I I'm not proud of it, but and it makes my
Right.
wife just like
Right. Right. Well, you know
once in a
what,
time.
Tony? I
Yeah.
think the pandemic, I know it made me a little more introverted, but now that I've lost my dog, I'm more extroverted. But yet, the humans today, they were just saying in our teacher days that the kids are not really talking to each other anymore. And I think that the current, like the phones and technology has contributed to that. So we're on a big push to get people to talk to each other again. And I feel bad for the introverts because I know they just really thrived during the pandemic because they were like,
Mhm.
yes, nobody calling me, nobody talking, nobody pulling at me. Yay. But I feel really bad about that, that we need to get people talking to each other because that's also a mental health. You talk to a therapist, just talking to somebody like you're nodding at me right now, just having somebody in your life that's nodding, empathizing, and listening to you is going to save the world in terms of the mental health issues that we have. We need to know that we are validated. We need to know that people do understand the struggle that we're feeling, whether they understand the actual anxiety or whatever the malady is. We need to make sure that we give that to each other.
It's so true what you said because I just had therapy on Wednesday, and I talked to my therapist who's a male, and he said he has found that now that he's back in his office, he said he had someone who would talk for 5 minutes on the phone, but now that she's in person, he's getting 55 minutes out of her.
Good,
So
good, good.
so a
It's
lot
that
of so a lot of
nodding.
times,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think a lot of times maybe through the phone, at least with therapy, I found it didn't work that well because you didn't know what the therapist was doing because mine was just on the phone. It wasn't through Zoom.
Oh, ours
So
is on
so
a
like
Zoom. Yeah.
yeah, so like I couldn't see the person. Like I didn't even know what he looked like until 2 weeks ago.
I'm so glad you're able to go live. That's great. You
And
really
my
have to find somebody that is a good chemistry, right?
right,
Yeah.
and that's half the battle, and
Yeah.
it's taken me probably 5, 6, 7 therapists to find it because a lot of them, they use me to get their hours, and then once they get their hours, they're off to greener pastures.
Wow.
So it's very frustrating because you feel and then they have to tell your story all over again and all the
Yes.
trauma portions, and you're
Yeah,
like,
and you're like sort of
oh,
rolling your own eyes to your own story, like, here we go again, telling my story.
yeah.
All right, number 5, being dominant over women or other men, and they have like microaggressions too. We hear that word with the racial tension and things that white people do to other races, but I think it also happens within genders, right?
Oh, for sure, and that's why I think I wrote to you that I've always felt like the uncommon male, just because I think because I was always closer to my mother than my father.
Mm.
Because my father, I love your shirts, by the way. You have awesome shirts on your website. Like,
Shirts. Oh,
oh, the shirts you sell on your website, like
like
where it says,
ain't gonna be
you
no
know,
stupid. Do I need to finish the phrase? What phrase would you have?
well, for my father, like, boomer. Like he
Oh
is the
yeah, yeah, the
definition of a
boomer.
boomer.
Yes.
He's the definition of a boomer. Like I struggle to talk to him because some of the things I won't repeat them because I want to be polite, but some of the things he says about like the things that are happening in the world,
I know.
and he's like so naive, so willfully ignorant to things, and I'm like, how are you half responsible for creating me? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
we're so different, to where I've told him, I'm like, Dad, I'm like, let's not talk about this stuff because I want to have a good relationship with you,
That's good.
because unfortunately there's some people who you just can't change their minds. They
Yeah.
are who they are, and it's like I've had to ask myself many times, do I want to have a relationship with my dad if he's going to be this toxic and bring up, political stuff? And I think it's important to have the dialogue because silence is bad,
Yep.
but with certain boomers, you're not going to change their mind. They have thought a certain way for years,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to like be like, Dad, times have changed. Things aren't the way they were when you grew up in the 50s. Like
Yep.
Elvis is dead. He's not around anymore, Dad. Like he still like loves to romanticize when he grew up,
Well, of
and
course.
everything was better. Like he's like everything was better when I grew up. You never heard about this, never heard about that, and
Yeah, when everything was in black and white, it was perceived that
yeah,
way. The
and
television
things were
portrayed it that way, but I don't think it was all so much better just because the television was portraying this perfect life. Is ridiculous what you think, but we romanticize it, don't we?
it was fake. And like my
Yes.
dad loves me TV. Like he
Oh,
watches
well, that's
like
delusional. I
it.
have it too, but it's delusional. I refer to the Brady Bunch, as you know, with your fear of coming onto the show with the red light syndrome. And I said, oh, you got to see that Cindy Brady episode. And then, of course, was it Cindy Brady? I don't remember. Oh,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but yeah,
But like it was Sydney, and like he loves like Father Knows Best. He watches that
of
show,
course, because
and
that
like
that's how people, that's
Gunsmoke,
how families used to be. That's how
and
everything was.
and Ozzie and Harriet. He watches Ozzie and Harriet. And I'm like, Dad, there's new shows like Modern Family
Yes,
and the
yes,
Goldbergs. There's
yes.
fun, innovative 21st century. Like even still, when I'm in the car with him, he still puts in the Elvis CD, and like he'll get emotional over Elvis. He
Wow.
still has
Wow.
this like everything was like Elvis, and
Yeah.
he's like, oh, when I was your age, my mom was always home, and I'm like, Dad, I'm like, nowadays with the way things are, you need, in most cases, you need to have a two-income household. Like things are just different, and he can't wrap his head around it. And I
Yeah.
try to talk to him, and I just end up, I'm like, I have to step out. I'm like, I can't talk to this man anymore. He's
Well,
so I, yeah,
it's funny you just say that because I never had children because I only believed personally that I could be a mom if I stayed home. I couldn't do teaching and mom. I am just shocked at people that do that. Like, how do you do an all day of kids and then go home to your own? Well, I did hear this once. Well, then once you have your own kids, you don't love other people's kids, which kind of breaks my heart because I still love other people's kids because I don't have my own,
Right.
right? So, but anyway, we already hit number 6, treating women as sex objects. Number 7, resorting to violence to resolve differences.
Can I go back to 6 real quick for 1 second,
Yes,
if that's okay
yes.
with you? I had watched an old interview. Did you ever watch the Dick Cavett show?
Yeah, a long time ago,
And
obviously.
yeah, he was interviewing Katherine Hepburn, and she was saying, I don't think she ever had any kids. I don't believe.
I
I'm
don't
not
think so.
100% sure
Yeah,
on
I
that.
think you're right.
And she said she realized for some women, and things I think have changed, but she was saying, for her, she wasn't able to have it all. She's like, I had to devote everything to my career, and she's like, I feel like I wasn't able to have it all. And I think sometimes the idea of having it all, like you described, and Katherine Hepburn, it can be hard to have it all sometimes.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I watch my friends and I'm like, stay home if you can. Just minimize your house. Get rid of one car. You can do
Yeah,
this,
right,
the stress
right,
is not worth it.
right.
So that's cool. So do you find then we're talking about toxic masculinity?
Hmm.
Violence tends to be a way that they used to resolve this. I think of like high school. There's always a few fights in the cafeteria or wherever in the hallway. You hear about fights all the time, and kids are all excited about these fights. It's fun. And as teachers, it's not. And I always say when I'm in class, I always tell the kids, I'm like, if you fight, I'm not stopping it because you're fighting in a building where adults are going to stop it, which tells me you have no courage. I say, you need to go meet in the park somewhere if you need to resolve your differences, but this is not the place to do it. And I don't think I had an almost fight once in my room, but it worked out fine. But tell me, what do you know about that? I'm sure the wrestling matches, doesn't that attract a lot of that toxic masculinity that gets off on watching violence?
Well, a lot of the crowd, it's more so with the crowd than with the wrestlers, because the wrestlers, they have to work together to not hurt each other. So there
Right,
was a lot
right.
of it was like they always made sure that they got along and they knew how the match was going to be
Yeah.
worked out. So I never experienced it like in the locker room or inside the matches, but there is sort of like this unspoken rule in wrestling where if someone's younger and they're facing someone who's been in the business for a long time, to beat the crap out of the younger guy, like let's make sure he's really into it, and let's make sure that he's really going to be
Yeah.
committed. So there's sort of they use the term he's green, which is like
Okay.
inexperience,
Mhm.
and the veteran kind of wants to show off his masculinity, so he'll just beat the crap out of him in a way where, because with wrestling, the illusion is to make it look like you're really hurting the person, without actually hurting them.
Right.
It's like you're supposed to make it like, I hate when people call it fake, because I've had people who have that I know who have died from it because of it's, I mean, the pain is real. It's supposed to. Somebody once said, one wrestler said, you can't fake gravity, and
Right.
even if even if it is predetermined. I never use the word fake. I never use the F word,
Right.
because I have so much respect for what they
Sure.
do, because it's
Yes.
entertainment, it's
Yes.
sports, there's so much that goes into it. But there's definitely that sense of like, oh, this guy's new, I'm going to break him in, and I'm going to really make sure he's in it. And as the young wrestler, they have to take the beating, and then if they speak up, they're going to get in trouble, because it's like, oh, he's a veteran, he's been wrestling 30 years, you've only been doing it for 5 months, you got to take your beating and earn your stripes. So
My brother we
mhm,
used to watch wrestling in the 80s, and he used to,
yeah.
oh, maybe the 70s, and we used to wrestle, and I'm sitting there with my tongue in my tooth right now because I still have a chipped tooth right here from wrestling with my brother. So I had to take it, like you said, I had to take it, shut up, don't say anything.
Who are some of your favorites growing up, if you don't mind me
You
asking
know
you?
what? All I remember is Hulk Hogan. Why do I remember him? That might be later in the day. But it was somebody who gouged their eyes out. There was a gouge their eyes out kind of scene, and then I don't remember names. Again, my brain.
Maybe George the Animal Steel? Was that drawn any?
Don't remember that.
With high school, people would always say to me, Tony, you've got a big mouth, and one day someone's going to beat you up.
Oh,
People, and it
did that
never
ever
happened.
happen? Oh,
Never happened,
good.
thankfully. But back when I was in grade school, someone did want to fight me outside, and I think this is a funny story. And it was like a real, snowy, and it was really, it was really bad weather outside. So I'm like, well, I have no idea how to fight, and I don't want to fight, but I guess I have to show up to this. And everyone's outside, and this kid goes to he goes to swing at me, slips on the ice,
Yeah.
falls and hits his head,
Oh no.
and the fight ended. And so I am 1-0 in fights without lifting a finger. He
I
just
love
hurt
it.
himself. He hurt
God's watching
himself.
out for you. I know you mentioned the word lucky, but I don't think anything's luck versus I believe in God protected you from that fight. Wow, Tony, that's funny.
The fight, I would go for the groin and the eye. I'd be a dirty fighter. Because
Oh,
I
for
wouldn't know what to
sure.
do.
For
I
sure.
would
I
just
think,
go. I would just go for the groin and the eye.
well, I know we always heard like shove your back of your hand up their nose. I heard that before for
Yeah,
self-defense moves. Go for their eyes, I know, like you said. And you're right. There's a move you can do around their knee that can paralyze them. I don't know. I need to probably
yeah.
take a refresher in my self-defense. But that would make, yeah. I'm not against violence actually to protect myself. All right, number 8, boys will be boys, an excuse for bad behavior. That's number 8.
But even like what happened with the Billy Bush thing with Trump, where grab him by the
Right,
what, like
right,
even
right,
that was like,
right.
oh, that was just locker room talk, and I'm
Yeah.
just, oh,
And it really
like,
was locker room talk, and that really is how people talk about women, and that is like that is really real. But does that make it okay? And I'm glad people are maybe watching their P's and Q's a little bit in terms of their inner monologue as well as their lust and whatever they're addicted to, and then also to like respect women. It's
right,
not that
and
hard.
it's so important too. And I think there's such a double standard, and I don't know how you feel about this, but men, it seems like if women hoot and holler at them, they seem to enjoy it. Like, oh, what a self-esteem boost. This woman was hooting and hollering at me.
Yeah.
But for women, they face it so much more than men do. And they face it in such, repulsive and, such, vile ways that I can't imagine what it would, what it would have to be like.
Yeah.
And just to constantly feel like you're being, looked at, and people are talking about you. And I remember in high school, some of the things that people would say, and I would just be uncomfortable because I'm like, hey, I know that girl. She's my friend, and I get along with
Yep.
her, and I don't like
Yep.
you talking about her like that. They'd be
Good for
like,
you.
oh, I'm just kidding around. I'm like, no, that's not funny.
I
And
agree.
I never enjoyed it. It always made me uncomfortable because, as I said, I never felt like I fit in. I never
Hmm.
felt like I, really. I mean, there are good men out there. I want to, stress that, but
There
I feel
are.
like sometimes some of the bad ones can outweigh the good ones.
Well,
And
yeah. I mean, you talk about the way they objectify women, and I think we need to lead with the sex card, or we need to give the sexy back. But I've taken sex off the table as of late, and it has changed my life. It's not an option until you marry me. So I've weeded out a couple of guys from that just by doing that, and it's been great because if we would just know to have that kind of resolve, I know it honors God as well, and so that's why I do it. And it's been a life-changing, game-changing. I can't really get into the details, but all right, number 9, feeling it's not okay to talk about your emotions. You've already shared with us you're in therapy, so I'm so glad, Tony, that
yeah.
I'm glad that you're sharing that therapy has definitely helped, talking to somebody.
Oh, I think I'm a firm believer, honestly, that everyone should be in therapy because
Absolutely.
so many people are so not self-aware. Like, I preach self-awareness. Like, we have to look at ourselves every day. What am I
Yes.
doing right? What am I
Yes.
doing wrong? How
Yes.
can I improve?
Yes.
And I've met so many stubborn people who never ever will acknowledge anything's wrong with them. Like,
That's
they think,
toxic right there. That is
yeah,
the toxic people we're talking about. If you think you're always right, you are the toxic human being.
and you can't reason with them. It's just
No.
like, banging your head against a wall,
Yes.
because you'll bring up like, you hurt me in this fashion. And I've done that. Like, I've been reaching out to people, like, now that I'm back on social media, I know there's people in the past that I've hurt, and I reached out to them and I'd say, hey, I remember this time I hurt you. I'm sorry for that.
That's
But
beautiful.
there's also people who have hurt me, and I'll bring it up to them like, hey, this happened to me, and they'd be like, oh, that happened 10 years ago. Why are you bringing that up? It's ancient history. I'm like, but it stayed with me,
Right.
and that stuff stays with you.
You never want to
And
be that person, right? That caused the pain, but I mean, we've all done it, but it's so scary.
And then I have gotten apologies, but I can tell when it's insincere or forced, and that to me is
Mhm.
just as bad as no apology. Like
It
when
is.
I'll say to someone like, you hurt me because like I mentioned wrestling, and there was this one wrestler who, one time we were out with a bunch of the wrestlers having, dinner, and I have, gap teeth, and he was relentlessly making fun of me throughout this, dinner, calling me Mike Tyson, SpongeBob, reach out and get braces, and just I had emailed him, and he did apologize, but it just seemed really he's like, oh, I was immature back then, and sorry it stayed with you this long. But you can tell when someone's like sincerely apologetic,
Yes.
compared to like, because now he's a public figure, so he
Mm.
probably, doesn't want to. I mean, I said, I'm not looking to get you in trouble. I just want to let you know that this stayed with me. And
Mhm.
for the longest time, I didn't feel comfortable smiling with my teeth because
Mm.
I just noticed this. That's all I
Love it.
noticed.
Dave
But
Letterman,
now,
Michael Strahan, there's a lot of people
yeah,
that kept
right.
their gap. I love it.
Yeah, and it's like they obviously have the money to fix it, so it's
Yeah.
like, but it works for them. And even like, Madonna's got, gap teeth too.
Yes. That's right.
So, but at the time when you're young, that stuff, stays with you. And I've realized, through therapy, that so much of the way I am now is because of how I was raised and the things I went through when I was younger. And you don't really
Mhm.
realize it, until you get older and you look back and you reflect. You're like, this experience is, why I'm sensitive to this, or this experience is why this bothers me.
You will always have triggers. I'm still having triggers daily, right? When only
Yeah.
usually triggers only when I'm with people because you don't
Yeah.
just like get triggered by yourself. But yeah,
Right.
it's interesting now. I'm learning to like when there is a trigger that I just sit with it, and it's not always the person that triggered it. It's just sometimes just, oh, that's this, that's that, and then you're able to step away from it and really evaluate and just like live in the moment and try to like breathe. And that's been helping me because I've also been in therapy for a while now. But the last one I want to talk about, if we can, is
Yeah, of course.
homophobia is on the list. And
Mhm.
I have come to conclude that through the years that society, it has a problem with all things feminine. So if you think about it, that's one thing that, I don't know, that's a toxic male trait. And I think the people too that are so adamantly angry towards the people that, are different from them are might be internally hiding something. That's another thing I think about too with that angry homophobic reactions.
Oh,
What
for
do you think?
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Because I've always felt that, I dealt with, people used to always call me through, middle school and high school and even in college, they would call me gay. And it didn't bother me that they called me that because I had nothing against, people who
Exactly.
are gay.
Yeah.
But just the idea that like I'll tell somebody, hey, I watched the, Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga movie, Star is Born, and
Yes.
I was wrecked. I was
Me
in
too.
tears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who wasn't wrecked by that movie?
Right. And they're just like, oh, you're a what or something. Like they'll
Oh.
throw around some term. And I'm like, listen, I'm like, I can cry and watch a dramatic movie, and then Sunday I can cheer and swear and watch football.
Yes.
More there's more dynamics to me, but
That's it.
because I didn't fit the mold. I didn't
Right.
drink beer. I didn't
Right.
have a car. I
Mhm.
didn't fit what they thought a guy should be. And even like with the NFL, they'll have, I'm like, they don't do it anymore, but they'll have like, pink stuff for, breast cancer awareness month.
Yep.
And I would get some of the stuff and they would make comments about that. Oh, why are you wearing pink? Only women wear pink. And like, it was really, really bad when I was, growing up. Like
Yeah, it was worse. You're
torturous.
right. And
Like,
then the color pink is actually was a male color back in the day, by the way. People don't know if they look at the history of it. They used to put boys in pink and girls in blue, just so you know. Go ahead.
and they used to call me like, Farinella, and
Oh.
just like, and like I've always had more female friends, than male friends, because I feel
Mhm.
like I can. And it's funny, I'll talk to women, and they'll say I have more guy friends than girlfriends, because sometimes women can be really mean towards each other. So
Yes.
I've always found that very interesting, that
Interesting.
like I've always gotten along better with women because I feel like
Interesting. There's no
they'll really talk
competition
to
then.
me.
I think it's the
Right.
competition thing.
It
It's
is.
weird.
And then also like I've always been someone who is very like I can always tell when someone feels comfortable or not because I am the classic oversharer. I will say everything on my mind. I like if
Yes.
somebody asks me how I'm doing, I won't just say I'm fine. I will tell you exactly, what's bothering me and
Yes.
why.
Yes. You're making up for
And
that kindergarten lost time.
exactly. And so many guys are just like, so how about that game last night?
I
Like
know.
it makes them uncomfortable. Like they
I
don't even want to
know.
go there. Like if I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm thinking about my mom today. I'm kind of sad,
Yeah.
today's the 16-year anniversary of when she passed or whatever.
Mm,
Like they don't want to hear, like they don't know how to, comprehend
yeah.
like the fact that you're sad or
Yeah.
you're, going through something or you watched a romantic comedy. They're like, no, watch Fast and Furious. I'm like, I can like Fast and Furious and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I can watch both. Like
Yes.
there's not just one right or wrong answer. And I think society loves to put people in boxes of
I
like,
know.
okay,
And that's what's to control us. Yes.
and I've always felt like I don't fit into any box. Like I
Amen.
can be like I have
Be
all
you.
sorts of qualities. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And
Yes.
I like to, be me and to, one thing that my wife always tells me, she's like, you just do you and you don't worry about what anybody else says.
I
You do
love
you.
your wife.
And
Oh,
oh, thank you. She's the best.
that's so great.
And she gets me and like she's always treated me, the right way and as like she's never seen me as like, feminine, which I think a lot of
Beautiful.
people do if you are a little bit on the sensitive side.
Mm,
And
no.
also sensitivity. People have said, "Oh, you're too sensitive. You get, worked up too quickly." And I'm like, "No, I'm like I only get sensitive because you provoked me. You were the reason I'm being
Yes.
sensitive." I'm
Yes.
like, I'm not just, walking around waiting to get offended.
Right, right. It's like you're reacting to the ignorance. That's all you're doing.
Right. Yeah. So like this thought of I'm like, I think sensitive is a good thing. It shows that
Yes.
you're in touch and
You're in touch.
you care about other people and you aren't being as you preach and you aren't being a narcissist, which
Yes.
like narcissists, they will step on you and think nothing of it. You are just someone in their path and they will walk
Yes.
right through
And
you on
yes.
the way to the top.
And they can't handle the truth. So that just shows you can
No.
always tell when you tell the truth and they're like, all right. So to
um
close, let's end this with one final thought you want us to take away from this conversation.
I would say just to quote a show right now that I'm watching called Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental.
Oh, I love that. I just started watching it. Ted Lasso, be
Oh
curious,
yeah.
not judgmental.
And I think that is so important. I think we need to know the why, as as to why is someone this way. What's causing them to maybe be sad or be angry.
Yes.
What's causing
Yes.
this, as opposed to being like, oh, that person's moody or
Yes.
that
Go
person's this.
good. Go into there and say, what's going on with you? I noticed this instead of coming at him like, you're rude. Sit down and shut up. Right. That
Right,
tone.
like
Oh,
ask questions. Like I mean, that's the whole
yes.
point of this is with interviews is to ask questions, and
Yes.
I like to get to know people.
I know.
I am endlessly curious about people. To me, I mean, everyone's got a story, just a matter of if they're willing to share it or not. And
Exactly.
I want to get to know people. So I would just say, be curious. And, if you see someone sad, or someone who's not maybe having friends, maybe be that person's friend. So they feel less alone because there's so many kids who are, maybe starting out in a new school and they don't have any friends. And you see them
Yeah.
at the lunch table by themselves, sit down and talk to them and get to know them and, make them feel comfortable. So I would just
Good.
say, just be kind.
I love
Like
that.
it takes so much more, it takes so much more to be a jerk than it does to be kind.
And you
Being kind
feel,
is easy.
yeah, you feel gross inside if you're a jerk. So yeah, I agree with you on that. Tony, this has been such a blessing to talk to you today. I want to let them know where we can find you. The Ultimate Rabbit is where you write movie reviews and your writing style is
Yes.
amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just posted a review of Those Who Wish Me Dead starring Angelina Jolie. I really enjoyed it. And I've got reviews, coming in the future. So,
I
I'm
love
also
it.
on Facebook. So if anybody who's watching this is a former student of yours, they could
Yes.
find me on Facebook. I'd love to reconnect. And
Yes.
thank you so much for having me and for listening. And this has been really therapeutic. I think I got, 2 therapy sessions this
Absolutely. That's how I always feel every
week.
time I interview someone. This has been it's more of a blessing to me than to hear your story and your wisdom. I grow so much through this. So I appreciate you so much, Tony, for reaching out to me on Facebook and for having this interview today.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so
being so
much.
receptive.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.